All right, all right, all right. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on the planet. I am joined today by a very special guest, a gentleman I met almost 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he is doing big things on the planet, for the planet, with the planet. As you know, I am always on, I guess, for lack of a better term, stalk alert to find people who are doing great things for humanity and pushing us forward. This is another edition of Visionaries and Truthtellers. My name is Anthony Carter. I am the producer of the show, the founder, the one that dreamed of all these, what can I put it? This wacky idea to talk to people and reach out to folks and get their opinions on what's going on in the world and in their lives. So, my guest today is Wyatt O'Brien Evans. That is a full name.
My mama gave me that name, baby.
Okay. Okay. It sounds like money, so we like it. It sounds wealthy. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself to your 30-second bio. Take it away and welcome.
Well, thank you. It's so good to be on this other side of the table for once. Good to see you again. I'm a native Washingtonian, a journalist. I've written for media outlets, including Huffington Post, Washington Blade, The Advocate, and my site, WyattEvans.com. Also an author. I write the Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels, gay, ethnic, and the latest installment is Frenzy and Delirium. The next book comes out early next year. Also, I have a podcast, Wyatt. It's titled Wyatt. And I'm also a subject matter expert for intimate partner violence and abuse. The acronym is IPVA, which is domestic violence and abuse within the LGBTQ plus community.
Okay, that was pretty close to well, you've done radio, so you know how to do 30 seconds, 45. So that was pretty much on the money. I think
I was
that was
biting the bullets here. I was trying to keep this thing in 30 seconds.
So let's jump right in because there is so much I want to dig in and discuss with you in terms of there's some things that when we met way back in 2013, there were some things you were talking about doing. You have now done, right? Which I think is highly unusual. A lot of times people will say everybody wants to do whatever is, the saying is everybody wants to wanna, right? Well, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. But you were one of the few people I've met who said, I'm moving in this direction, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z. And not only did you do X, Y, and Z, but you kept going and did other things. And there's so much stuff that are going.
Well, Anthony, a perfect example, I'm glad you brought that up. A perfect example is when I do book tours, seminars, and what have you. I always get this question from at least one person. I've got a book in me. What do I do? I said, you sit yourself down and you write it. And that means you have got to make it a priority in your life. If you really believe you have a voice that needs to be heard, you make it into a priority, meaning sometimes you might not be able to watch their football game because they got the money. They don't need you. So you just have to, on a regular basis, carve out the time to do that.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think we all have 24 hours in a day, right? And then if you ask people, what are you doing with your time? People will say, well, they don't want to talk about that. It's just like, I've been doing financial coaching and I kind of fell into it because it was something I wanted to do. Right. I literally put it out of the universe. I started writing about it and almost started doing lessons for it, like what I would teach, like what would be something I want to cover. And then when I moved, I don't know if you know this, but I recently relocated back to the East Coast. When you met me, I was in Long Beach,
Long
Beach, California. And now I'm back in Connecticut. I used to live in New York, but now I'm back in Connecticut. So I've been back in Connecticut now, back on the East Coast for about 6 weeks. And when I got here, I was like, I think I want to change. I want to do something. Part of the move was let's do a new adventure. And part of the new adventure is how do I recreate myself once again and do something else? And I wanted to do financial training. You're going to say something?
That's great. I mean, I think that's wonderful. We need that. I mean, because, and with this economy, Kudos.
Thank you. Thank you. And it reminded me when you were talking about people saying, well, how do you write a book? How do you get time to do it? It reminded me of the coaching that I'm doing with somebody. I did a coaching session yesterday, and I do it with people all the time. And I say, the difference is you have to make some decisions. What either you're gonna save and get your credit together and buy a house, or keep shopping. But either one, right? But either one, it's the same amount of money. It just, it's gonna have to. It's something I'm gonna talk to you about later on in the interview about doing things that cost you. They're gonna cost you something. I think I heard you say that in an interview recently. But I want to talk about that. Like, yeah, it's gonna if you're doing A, that means you're not doing B.
Exactly.
Very simple, very, very simple. So let's talk about that. So when you started writing, and I read your first book, I haven't gotten to the second one. And I did read the first one. And what I definitely want to talk about intimate partner violence.
Sure.
Because I do think it's something that goes on more often than we realize. And I also think it's something that we don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost as if you don't talk about it, then it's not happening, right? It's not going on. Right. So I wonder, and I know years ago you and I had talked about we had talked about either doing a book tour or a reading together where we could cover the same issues, but you would do it in a narrative in a fiction setting, and I would do it more in an essay in an academic setting. And you did it in a fiction setting. So my question to you about writing that book or writing this book, Nothing Can Come Between Us. And what did you ever think, well, who's going to read this? This is about two quote unquote straight acting men. Who's going to read this? And what sustained you the whole process to go from beginning to end? Because it's a big deal to finish a book.
It is. Well, first of all, with intimate partner violence and abuse, I do it as a speaker, as a journalist. So I do it both nonfiction and fiction. Mm-hmm. Wow. Let me see if I can condense this. Okay. When I was growing up, I didn't have a father. My father died when I was very young. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have that regular male role model in the house. And I was also going through a lot of trauma and indecision about my sexual orientation. Okay. And I had a mother, 4 sisters. I'm the youngest. I'm saying my mom, wants me to grow up and have kids and all that. So all of those things weighed on me. So anyway, and I felt awkward as a kid. Fast forward to me being a junior at college, I went to the George Washington University. Mm-hmm. So I met my first partner, who was a sophomore at Howard, right? And we developed a relationship. But unfortunately for me, I had these chronic self-esteem issues and not being able to deal with my sexual orientation and all of that, still being in the closet. You have to realize that this was like 40 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, he turned out to be an abuser. The honeymoon period is always wonderful when you first meet that person. The sex is great. The sex can be an aphrodisiac, and that hooked me in. And an abuser is like a shark in the water where there's a lot of blood. They can smell your insecurities. Mm-hmm. And he knew that I was insecure about my sexual orientation, about my body, that sort of thing. And he honed in on it. So I was in this abusive relationship for a number of years. Now, let me tell your audience that there are 3 parts of intimate partner violence and abuse. You have the physical, you have the mental, and you have the emotional. Mental and emotional are very synergistic. They work together. And sometimes those mental and emotional scars are deeper and longer lasting than the physical. For me, it was 90% emotional, mental. So I was going through all of this for years. And what happened was, the straw that broke the camel's back was, I can remember this so well. Beautiful summer day, sunny day. I'm at the giant food store. This fool pops up and we get into a physical fight. And he got the better of me. And I said to myself, I got to get rid of this guy.
Mhm.
We weren't living together at the time, which helped a little bit, but it even made it worse because he didn't have that proximity that he was used to. So anyway, my brother-in-law, who was a cop at the time, put the fear of God in him. I was able to get out of the relationship.
Mhm.
Then I went through a number of years of counseling, and we'll talk about that later. I'm a strong proponent of counseling. That healed me. I came to terms with my sexual orientation and all of that. So that led me to write the Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels because I said intimate partner violence and abuse is not really talked about. And that's the
Mhm.
overarching theme in my series of novels. So I said, I'm going to make this real. I'm going to talk about that, write about that. So that's how I made ITVA the major theme
Mhm.
of the series.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think you hit on a couple of things. We could be here all day because you hit on a couple of things. One of the things is I am a huge believer, big proponent, have been for a number of years about therapy
Mm-hmm.
and about, people going. And I remember I was thinking about this the other day about how when I was in college, I graduated 31 years ago. So I've been out of college. I've been out longer than I was, and I was a baby. When I came out, I was 23. And I remember my last year in college, I was going to go to graduate school,
Okay.
and I didn't go. I was going to go to this program at the University of Minnesota, and I didn't go. And I remember wondering when that was over. It was right around that same time. I remember thinking after I graduated that mental health in the gay community, and particularly the Black, because I was dealing with Black males at that point. I was exclusively dealing with Black gay men at that point. So I remember thinking that there was something that was very broken that we needed to handle, right? But nobody was talking about it. This was 30 years ago. And when I was bringing it up, people were looking at me like I might as well have dropped down from Mars. What are you talking about? This
Right.
doesn't make, that's not what we do, the blah, 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 blah. Now, keep in mind that a lot of the behaviors were very pathological and disturbing. And nobody looked at the behaviors and said, well, is that what we should be doing? And that was really, it's almost like it was one of those things where, like I said a couple of minutes ago, if we don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist. We don't have to address it. So I'm a huge proponent. So ever since then, I've been to therapy. I've been to a couple of different, I've been probably to 4 or 5 different therapists. I've
Mm-hmm.
been in couples therapy with somebody I was with. I've been by myself. I've done every variation I get my hands on. I'm done because I do believe that it works.
It
And
does.
mhm,
And sometimes you have to go through, I tell people you have to go through several to find your right fit. I
yes,
mean, I love having my ass on the couch. I really, really do. And I tell people this, for example, let's say you broke your arm, right? You're not going to treat it yourself. You're going to go to the doctor. She or he will probably put it in a cast and give you some pain meds. That's the same thing with the psyche. You've got to talk about it, find out what these underlying issues are so you don't repeat, adverse behavior. And if you have to be on an antidepressant for a while, that's okay too. Just make sure, everybody, that when you do, if you have to start an antidepressant, find one that doesn't screw up with your sexual function.
yeah,
I'll tell you this really quick story and we'll move on. I was once on Zoloft, right, for a number of months. And after a couple of weeks, I'm saying to myself, I don't have any interest in sex. And I can't have an orgasm. No matter how hard I try, I couldn't have an orgasm,
okay,
or with a partner. And so I went to the therapist and said, something's wrong. Oh, but I forgot to tell you that Zoloft might
right,
this to you. So he put me on something else and everything worked out. But you got to see a therapist. You truly do.
right. And I think it's important, when you, like you say, it takes time to find one,
Right?
and it's also just like you said, if you broke your arm, You know, if you fell down, if you were sick, if you have COVID, right, you wouldn't heal yourself. You'd go, you'd go, you'd go pay somebody or take your insurance and you'd go get that handled. And to me, it's the same thing. It's just, you know, it's like, you know, you want to see them before you quote unquote need them. So it's almost like a preventative type of thing. So yeah, well, that's a whole other episode, Mr. And the last thing I'm going to say about it, and we'll move on, is that I remember talking to my mother about it about 30 years ago. It was a while ago, right? And she's come a long way since that. And she's, you know, um, I was putting out, you know, I remind people that she's older. She's from, you know, the rural Oklahoma. So they're from these towns where, you know, you don't discuss anything, right? You kind of keep going, you know, and I remember she and I got into this heated discussion and I was saying, well, you know, people should go to therapy. And she couldn't understand, like she had no concept of why you'd want to do that. Like, why would you do, you know, and her whole concern was, well, are you talking about me? And I said, there's a whole bunch of stuff I can talk about that's not you. I said, you trust me, I got a whole litany of things. But what was funny about that to me, though, I remember saying at the end of the conversation that if you are Black, right, if you are a person of color, if you're a person who is marginalized, if you've been in America any amount of time, you need to go to see a therapist. At some point in your life, you need to go sit on somebody's couch. Because because you've been affected by things you don't even, that have so much become a part of the culture and so much a part of what we do and the way we interact, that you don't even recognize them as being off anymore. Right. So I think everybody at some point spends some, I'm not saying make a lifetime of it, but I think everybody should spend some time, go in there, shake out those cobwebs, look around, you know, you're not gonna like what you see because none of us do, but you know, you'll make it out of it, okay. So
I totally agree, Anthony. Yeah.
um so really quickly about the intimate partner violence. Can you give us 2 or 3 tips, like something to watch out for? Or if you get in it, how quickly can you, how would you manage getting out of it? Yeah. So how do you just stay out of it? Or how do you get out of it when you're in it?
Oh, first of all, let me tell your audience that if you go to WyattEvans.com, my website, I've got an extensive section on intimate partner violence and abuse with articles I've written, information, resources, what have you. But the bottom line is that it's all about control. It's that abuser wanting to control you, every aspect of your life. And you know that you're in an abusive relationship, Anthony, when you find yourself walking on eggshells around this person. You're afraid to have your own opinion. You're afraid of what he's going to do to you. I mean, the abuser can isolate you from family or friends, tell you what to wear, tell you when to get up, what to eat, the whole isolation from family and friends, the verbal abuse, the threats, all of that. So when you see that happening, that's when you need to make your great escape. And that's a phrase I've coined for my workshops. And in order to do that, you have to really believe you deserve to be the hell out of that, because nobody deserves to be physically, emotionally, mentally abused and victimized.
Right.
You know, but you got to do it carefully. You must carefully plan your exit strategy. And you got to tell people that you trust, because the most potent weapon in an abuser's arsenal is silence, when nobody knows what's going on. He or she's going to continue to do whatever the hell he or she wants to do. So you got to carefully plan it. I mean, in the beginning, you know, when I was in the first throes of my abusive relationship, you know, he would call me 24/7, where are you, whatever. My self-esteem was so shot, I said, oh, he loves me. He loves me so much that he wants to know where I am 24/7. No,
wants to make sure I'm okay.
that is control. He wants to control everything you say, everything you do. And then there's a whole thing about, you know, you have to wear this type of clothing. See, if it were me today, I would say, look, take me down to Gucci and I'll tell you what to buy. You know what I'm saying? We ain't talking Macy's, we talking Gucci. Listen, you want to control what I wear? Okay, well, let's go down to these high-end shops like Gucci.
Let's
And
really do this. Yes.
yes, let's really do this. So I'm trying to inject a little humor into a very serious situation, but when you see those signs, that's when you need to run. But you got to do it in a very methodical way. You've got to plan it. You got to plan it. Because sometimes there's something called, when you leave the situation, it's called separation abuse. And that can be sometimes the most dangerous part of the relationship because, again, he doesn't have proximity to you anymore and he can't stand it. So you got to really plan it. And be sure to go to WyattEvans.com. I've got a whole section that will help you.
Okay. Well, that is pivotal. I think it's super important. I know that, yeah, the isolation is always the number. To me, isolation and a lot of the secrets are like the double header. You know, when you find people that keep secrets, or you find people that well, here's another one. When you find people that can get along with anybody, it's like something's wrong with you. Like you don't like no, you can't get along with anybody, right? Or you find somebody who doesn't have any long-term relationship. Like no, like they don't have a friendship that's older than a year or two. And it's like, that's weird.
That's a neon flag. A neon flag. Yes. I'm so
Yes.
glad you brought that up.
Because I've known people like that. I'm like, and then you start thinking, well, wait a minute. If you don't like, if you can't get along with anybody and I'm here, well, what is going on here? Maybe there's something to it. Maybe there's a reason about nobody wants to be bothered with you. So that's a dead giveaway. So really quick to wrap this up, I want to talk about I know you talk a little bit about your connection with the National Trauma Organization.
Right. Thank you for bringing that out. It's the National Trauma Education Board, and we are a national network of professionals who deal with trauma in all of its forms.
Okay.
And basically, the board is twofold. I'm the LGBTQ chair of the National Trauma Education and Policy Board. And the mission is twofold: to increase awareness around all forms of trauma, and also to effect policy to help, to help it better for people. What we're doing now is we're working on this major event in Washington, D.C. It's like an outreach awareness. We're trying to get members of Congress involved as well. And we've got some Congress people that have signed on. I really can't talk about it much, but I think that if we pull this off, it really will help the community. So
Okay.
I'm really excited about that.
Okay. Well, let's speak it into existence when you pull it off. Not if, but when.
Yes, thank you.
When you pull it off. Okay.
There you go.
Your days as a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother world too. Yeah, I used to do stand up back in the day, like in the 90s. And I actually, HBO used to do a half-hour comedy show for performance, right? So I was there in North Carolina, in Raleigh, I believe, trying out for them for the championship. Unfortunately, I only made the second cut. It was difficult because we had to make folks laugh in 5 minutes, which is not easy to do. 5 minutes is something else. And I'm glad you brought that up because, really briefly, the reason why I didn't succeed is because this was like the 90s, late 80s, 90s. I wanted to talk about gay stuff, same gender loving male stuff. And I felt so constrained and constricted because I knew that at that time that was a no-no. So I was doing stuff, I was getting a lot of work regionally and what have you, and great reviews, but I wasn't being my authentic self. And I just felt this is not for me anymore. I just I couldn't do what I wanted to do.
Okay.
So yeah, that's another life.
Okay, that's I found that out about you after doing a little
Yeah.
bit of digging, and I said, okay, that makes sense. And I too, in another lifetime, I was a stand-up comedian. I did it for
I didn't know that.
yeah, I did it for 2.5 years. I had my own room for 6 months in the village in New York. I lived in New York. When I got to New York, that was just my exploratory stage for everything. Like my goal was just to get on stage in any capacity and work, right, and learn and learn and learn. And I did stand up for, yeah, I did it for 2.5 years. Same thing with you, same thing like you just said. I didn't have um the world was a very different place. You're talking about 1999 to
Right.
2000 to 2001, right? And I remember I would do jokes about, you know, having a partner and being gay. And I was also doing jokes around police brutality.
Oh,
And people couldn't hear it. It was not, and I was talking about gay marriage. And then fast forward 10 years later, and I looked up and Margaret Cho had exploded. She had been working anyway, but like Margaret Cho exploded, and there were some other people who were talking about the same thing that I had been talking about. And my only regret is that I didn't have the fortitude, the support network to
yeah.
keep going. If I had stayed with it, but what I've learned over the years, I don't know how old you are, but I'm now 54. What I've learned over the years is that typically as artists, we're very appreciative or whatever it is when you know something is coming down the pike. Right? So
Right.
you see it before the world sees. Like this is where we're headed, right? And what I've learned over the years is it's the trick is to stay on your path and keep going, even though nobody can see what you see,
Right.
and to get some people around you like, yeah, keep going. But I didn't know to gather the forces, like circle the wagons and say, I need support while I'm talking about these things and nobody's talking about it as of yet. And then now everybody's talking about it. And it's like, whoa, it's like if I had just waited,
Right. Yeah, you know what? I know what you mean. I'm a little older than you are, and I totally get it. With my Wyatt podcast, if you notice, I inject strategic humor into it as well.
hmm
I've made my podcast, arguably it's unique because I deal with topical issues. I'll have activists, actors, entertainers, politicians, porn stars, because that's all part of the gay, same gender loving experience. But I also inject that humor in there as well. And I just, I attribute that to my comedic roots because those will never die, you
hmm
know. And I think by injecting that strategically, and cleverly, it really makes the podcast fuller, more energetic, just livelier.
Yes, yes, I agree. And once you've done stand up, you
Mhm.
understand. Because I was watching your some of your podcasts today, and I was watching your stuff and watching you in interviews, right? And I can see, I was like, oh, okay, you can tell that you've done things live and been on stage where you're constantly reading the room, right? To figure out where to speed up, where to slow down, where to pause, and let people catch up to wherever your mind is going. And it's kind of like, oh, that's what that looks like. And anybody who's done stand up or improv, if you
Right.
that's a good tool for learning the same thing, for
Improv, right?
listening to basically going wherever, not trying to direct a conversation, but letting things go or letting things come up organically, and then say, okay, well, I'm gonna ride that wave until it's time to.
Yeah.
So
Anthony,
yes.
you're absolutely right because sometimes the unscripted stuff is a bigger, better wave than what you had already prepared to say or to ask.
That leads me to a question. Have you ever taught? Have you ever like taught in a classroom or done workshops?
Yeah, writing
Okay.
workshops, definitely.
Okay.
Many years ago, I did a comedy workshop as well. Um, and actually, New York City used to have something called I don't know if they still do, the Comedy Institute, where it's like a 2-month course
Hmm.
and you graduate from it. And I did that as well. So I took stuff I learned from there and I taught a comedy course many, many years ago. But yeah, I teach like how to write a novel, how to just write in general,
Okay.
that sort of thing.
Okay. Because I look at stand-up comedy, improv, teaching, because I've done all of them. To me, they're very related in that you might come in as a teacher with a plan, right? You don't just come in and say, what do you want to learn today? You come in with a lesson plan and objectives, and you've worked on it. And a good teacher, a wise teacher, will come in and say, we were going to do X, Y, and Z, but today we're not really, you guys aren't really ready to do that. Or this is a more interesting way to get to this over here. And I'll keep this in my back pocket. I'll use it later. So nothing is wasted, but you also don't force something to happen that's just not in the cards that day to happen. So that's what I was asking that.
Smart.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Yes.
All right, my friend. Okay. Let's see. I have some questions I want to ask at the end. The kind of
Oh,
rapid fire. There's a
uh-oh.
bunch of questions that I stole from the great Viola Davis.
Oh
So I'm
God.
not.
You're killing me,
I was like, those
Carter.
are good. They're coming out. Not yet. I'll let you know. I'll give you. I'll let you know this is coming. Okay. So tell me about. You talked about your writing. You talked about your books.
Right.
Um, what was your vision when you got ready to launch your pop podcast slash radio show? Are they the same thing or they're two different things?
Yeah, same thing. This is
Okay.
the third iteration,
Okay.
actually. I had some years before the Woe Show for Wyatt
Hmm.
O'Brien, and also Wyatt Man Cave. And then I just dropped off because I was doing some other things. So I decided to come back with it. But I really planned it very meticulously. And the mission of the show is to to show all aspects of SGL gay life. Like I said, from politics,
Hmm.
entertainment, all of that, all of that. I just thought that was really very important. I wanted to inject some humor into it as well. And the mission is to, I want to make, I want to tell the story of the guest.
Okay.
I want the audience to know that guest full bodied story. And it's not a gotcha show.
Right. I heard that. Yeah, I heard that in one of your interviews.
Right. I hate those kinds of shows. I
Hmm.
want to tell your story authentically, clearly. I want to do that. And I want to, and I hate some interviewers who step on the guest's words. They're so busy talking and talking and talking, they don't give the guest the opportunity, the space to tell their own story. So that's what the Wyatt show is all about. And I launched it in 2020, November 2020. It's doing extremely well, thank
Hmm.
God. And oh, another thing I want to do, I want to show a variety of guests,
Hmm.
you know, a variety of guests, because we all come from different walks of life.
Okay.
Right.
Well, let me see. Let me heap some praise on you. I meant to do it at the beginning, and I want to make sure that I do not forget this. I'm
So
very, very proud of you for the work that you've done and you'll continue to do. I always like it, and I'm always very proud of people who are actually doing the work, right? And are moving things, right? And what I mean by that, I really like it when, and I'm always very impressed when people start on one station in life, and then they say, well, let me see if I can do this over here, and then they add that, and then they add the next thing. So I'm really big on movement and people moving their lives, and it's interesting to watch to see you go from doing radio, doing stand up, writing a book, going all over the country talking about the intimate partner violence, and then doing the Woe Show, and then so it's all this movement. So I'm very happy that you're doing that. I'm very proud that you're doing that. You're not sitting around saying, "Oh my God, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. What are we going to do?" It's like you're in it, right? And you're making a contribution, which is a whole lot better than sitting around waiting for somebody else to do something. So
I really appreciate you saying that. Really, thank you so much.
okay, let's move on to some
Oh,
rapid fire questions,
okay.
because one of the things we want to do with the production company and with the Visionaries and Truthtellers is educate, entertain, uplift, right?
Okay.
And so we want to cover heavy stuff, and we need that, but we also need some brevity, some lightness, you need all of
Okay, I get you.
your show. And your show is doing very well. I was looking at YouTube and I was like, whoa, this guy's, people are really, all these views, whatever you're doing. I need some of that magic. So send me some of that, some of that juju through the, oh, there it is.
And listen, I want to thank all the listeners really, because when you
Okay.
start a new endeavor, you wonder if it's going to be successful or not. So
Right.
thank you.
Yes, because it's billions of things people can watch on YouTube. Cats on water skis, kittens hiding. I mean, I've like, who's watching this? So it's tons of stuff people could watch, but they're tuning into your show, which means I think you're doing something great and tapping into whatever is the zeitgeist, whatever's going on the planet. So let's have a bit of fun before we get to the questions at the end and we wrap up. So
Okay.
tell me about the very first job you ever had.
The very first job I have ever had was I was a clerk, and I can't remember the name of the company. It was a shoe manufacturer. I was a clerk, and I didn't get along with the boss. He didn't like me. I think he could pick up that I was gay, and that didn't. It was for the summer. It was not a very pleasant experience.
Okay. Okay. Tell me about so it was a shoe store. Okay. Um, let's talk very quickly about I'll say that for the end. Um, what would your last meal be?
What would my last meal be? Banana pudding.
Oh, okay.
Love it.
Yeah. See, if I ever go back to eating sugar, I'll make sure I have I go back and forth with the sugar tips. So we'll see how that works out. So I'm going to jump into now. There's 7 questions. I'll try to get to all 7 with it and get us out of here in less than an hour.
Okay.
There's 7 questions, and these are 7 questions I stole from an interview. Well, let me rephrase that. They say artists borrow; they don't steal. So borrowed these questions that Minnie
Okay.
Driver asked Viola Davis. One of them you've already answered about your last meal. The other ones, let's just go through the other ones really quickly. So the first one would be, what relationship, real or fictionalized, epitomizes love to you?
Oh God. Oh Lord. Probably my relationship with my mother.
Okay.
She had to be father and mother, and we just had a strong, strong bond. And she really understood where I was coming from.
Okay. So one with your mom. Okay. Um, what characteristic do you least like about yourself?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
What characteristic do you least like about yourself?
Oh God. I'm perfect.
Don't say
What are you talking about?
that.
No, perfect. Uh when people when people say they're going to respond back and they don't.
Okay.
I hate that, because see, good business means that you respond back. I mean, don't you hate it when you send an email to somebody, for example, with an important issue, whatever, and they don't
Yes.
respond back, or they take too long to do so? I don't
Because
like
they don't think it's important.
but that's not good
Or
business.
it's not as important to them as it is to you.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Okay. So what characteristic about you do you least like? So if you're looking at people not responding to you, what characteristics? So what would you call that?
This way. I can be, I can sometimes be impatient.
Impatience. Okay.
Yeah, with people when I think they're not doing everything they need to do to succeed, that
Okay.
I get impatient with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Got it. Okay. What question would you most like answered?
Uh, when am I gonna make $10 million?
Okay. Okay. What person, place, or experience uh most altered your life?
Wow. I think the whole IPVA thing
Okay.
did because it forced me to get the help I needed to become the full person that I am today. The
Got it.
person that who was totally comfortable with the sexual orientation and other issues. So yeah, I,
Okay. Okay. What um what is something that was created? Let me rephrase that. What is something beautiful that you created that was in the midst of hardship? But there was a hard time in your life. You created something really wonderful and beautiful and powerful.
that's a very good question. I think it's the novel Nothing Can Tear Us Apart because I was dealing with issues, particularly the IPVA, that people just
Hmm.
didn't want to talk about. And I noticed that when I wrote the first one, Rage, I got a lot of positive reviews, and people would say to me, "You know what? This happened to me. I
Hmm.
know that it happened. I know it happened to other people. You brought it to the forefront. You dragged the elephant. You dragged it out of the closet.
Okay.
Talked about the elephant in the room."
Okay. When were you the most happiest in your life?
Oh wow!
Or when were you the happiest, not most happiest? When were you the happiest in your life?
I think right now because I've gone through some things that have made me understand myself even better. I'm working on this new novel, Delirium. I'm finding that this is going to be really, really good. I'm very excited about it. It's making me I'm freer to do it, to truly express exactly what I want to express in this novel.
Mhm.
So I think today, right now, is that time.
Okay. A couple more questions and we will
Mhm.
wrap up. So, this is com com repeat and complete. So this is some
Uh-oh.
STEM work. So I'll say it. I'm going to start off a sentence.
Okay.
You repeat it, and then you answer however you want to answer. Okay. So instead of complaining, dot dot dot.
Oh, okay, right. Instead of complaining, get your ass off the couch or the chair and do it. Again, don't tell me I got a book in me. What do I do? Well, what you do is you write it, you research it, you write it, you get your promotional plan together and you write it, and you make alliances, connections, and you write it. So don't complain about stuff. Just create a plan and do it.
Okay. And instead of worrying, dot dot dot.
Oh, wow. That's easier said than done. Instead of worrying, do everything in your power to change the situation into a positive. And if you believe in a higher power,
Mhm.
like I do, you get on your knees and you pray and you say, "Give me the strength, the wisdom, the creativity to make changes."
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's hard to say, don't worry, but worrying is so counterproductive. It's a waste of energy.
Mhm.
And worrying isn't going to necessarily change the situation. Effectuating positive change will change the situation, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. Yes. And you should get that on a bumper sticker. That definitely makes sense. Because most of us worry and hand wring, and it's like, okay, that's not going to change anything.
Uh,
Okay, so I will wrap it up here. But before we do so, here's my last question for you.
okay.
What is one question I didn't ask you that you wish I had asked?
Um, Actually, seriously, I can't think of anything. You really covered it well. You are a very skilled interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
Done your research. You you easily move in and out from serious to playful and back again. So yeah, I mean, man, do not break your hand patting yourself on the back, but you did a damn good job. I can't think of anything else.
Okay, I'm gonna bring you on board as my agent. I need some work around here. I need.
But we'll talk about money now. I gotta ask this.
Okay, well, I am going to wrap us up, get us out of here, so you can get on with your evening and get on with my evening. Before we go, pitch away. Tell them people where they can find you, where they can get your book, the dates, all the stuff you did at the beginning. Let's bookend it. So go for it. Tell everybody how they can reach you and reach out to you, where they can find you.
Okay, visit WyattEvans.com, WyattEvans.com. It has the IPVA section about the podcast, about the book. You can email me at wyattonair@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram at sir.wyattofficial, Twitter at MISTERWOE, Mr. Woe, Facebook.com/Wyatt O'Brien Evans.
Okay, folks, you heard it here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mr. Evans. It was a great interview. It was great talking to you. Finally getting caught up a
Yeah,
decade later, but we did it. We
yes,
did it. We made it happen. I will talk to you very soon.
Mr. Carter, thank you for the opportunity. I greatly appreciate it.